Hi there, welcome to Across the Balkans. I'm Nafisa Latic. Great to have your company. A major power outage which hit Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania and most of Croatia's coast has raised many concerns about the stability of electric supplies in the region. On June 21st, the electricity went down in 4 countries in the early afternoon, leaving people without air conditioning in the middle of the heat wave for hours. Montenegro's energy minister said the shutdown was caused by a sudden increase in energy consumption due to rising temperatures. Power distribution is linked across the region for transfers and trading. Adam Amunu reports.
The last thing anyone wants is to be stuck in traffic in the summer heat. But that's what's happened in cities across some Balkan countries after a major power outage struck the region on Friday afternoon. It's left Montenegro, Bosnia, Albania and parts of Croatia without electricity for several hours. Public transportation like trams couldn't operate. Lights were out across homes. Albania and Montenegro's energy minister said a surge in energy consumption and high temperatures were to blame.
Dakle, problem je nastao kao posljedica jako velikog opterećenja, porasta dnevnog opterećenja s jedne strane i vrlo visokih temperatura. Kad imate ta dva uzroka međusobno povezana, onda imate situaciju da električnu energiju ne možete na pravi način prenositi prenosnim vodovima, odnosno vodovi su preopterećeni i došlo je do njihovog ispada. Ispad jednog voda znači preopterećenje drugog voda i tako u krug jednostavno dolazite u situaciju da dođe do ovoga što se danas desilo.
Power grids in the region remain connected decades after the Balkan Wars in the 90s.
Znači, cijeli sustav, elektroenergetski sustav kontinentalne Europe je međusobno uvezan i to ima i prednosti i mane. Prednosti su da možemo uvoziti i prodavati električnu energiju, ali naravno mana je i da se takvi poremećaji prenose iz jednog sustava u drugi.
And this could be a problem in the face of the human-caused climate crisis, where repeated intense heat waves are expected to be the norm. Balkan countries are speeding ahead to invest in renewable energy, but their power grids lag behind. Industry officials believe distribution systems here are not ready for new energy sources. Grids will need to expand and energy storage prioritized. Until this happens in a tighter fashion, blackouts here might no longer be a thing of the past, but a regular feature of life. Adam Amunu, Across the Balkans.
Let's cross to our panel now. I'm joined from Podgorica by Zvijezdan Vujović. He is the Director General of Directorate for Power Engineering at the Montenegrin Ministry of Energy and Mining. And from Tuzla, Bosnia, by Denis Žiško. He is an Energy and Climate Change Program Coordinator at a center established by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Thank you both for being our guests. Zvijezdan, let me start with you. Many questions are still unanswered. What is the main cause of the shutdown?
We still don't know what the exact cause is, and that will be known in the coming period, after the detailed analysis of the causes are finished, which can last up to 6 months. Our energy system is not isolated and is part of integrated regional and European energy system that functions on a principle of connected vessels, in which external factors can also lead to blackouts. The first unofficial data indicate that extremely higher temperatures and greater integration of renewable energy sources also contributed to the instability, and that the blackout is not a result of happening in just one country alone. But more details will be known only in the upcoming periods after all investigations are conducted.
Right. And what is the situation, Zvijezdan, at the moment when it comes to Montenegro, when it comes to energy supply, as the high temperatures are likely to continue?
Yes. Well, the energy system in Montenegro is now stable, and the state and the energy companies are closely monitoring the situation in order to ensure, first of all, the security of supply as our priority energy goal. Incident situations like these are a risk that cannot be completely eliminated, but the essence is to respond adequately and readily in such situation, as was the case now. because the situation completely returned to normal in just the 2 hours. Because countries are linked with the interconnections, blackouts can affect more regions and can spread to a wider territory, as was the case, unfortunately, last Friday, because it affected Albania, Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Croatia. Hopefully, it didn't have some bigger effects on everyday life, as the situation was fixed in a very short time. But it really stressed again how energy is important in our everyday life, especially security of energy supply. And that principle of energy security must be a top priority of every country's energy agenda.
Right.
I want just to add one more thing, that this situation is also a signal, or let's say a warning, that we must be fully ready in the future, that if blackouts like this occur, we must promptly react and be able to fix them. And that this energy transition we are currently in, the green transition and the energy development we are trying to implement, must be done in line with proper infrastructure investments.
Denis, what do you think? What did we learn from this incident about the state of electricity supplies in the region?
Yeah, well, the fact is that I'm old enough to remember that we used to have similar situations in, let's say, in former Yugoslavia. We have to understand that the actual grid was built in former Yugoslavia, so we used to be one country. And the connections are existing, and they work, and they should work like that, and actually they should be improved. The thing that we learned is basically that we have to start immediately investing in improvement of grids and connectivity, because that's the only way that the future energy system will function. Because with the introduction of hundreds or thousands of sources of renewable energy, the grid and connectivity has to be improved, because we'll have much more energy, let's say, flowing through the grid all over the region. And one even more important thing that we have to think of and start immediately investing is actually the digitalization of the control of the grid, because that's something which I don't see really happening that much. And I quite often say that we are sort of over the time when we had one dispatcher with 2 switches controlling the inputs from 2 coal power plants. That system will not exist in the future, and we have to work on investing in increasing the capability of the control of the grid, the balancing of the grid, with digitalization of the system. Otherwise, we are going to face these collapses quite often, which are, in this case, basically the result of the climate change, which is here now. It is not anymore something which we were talking about that will happen in the future. We are actually now living the climate change, and we'll have more and more of these extremes where we'll have increased consumption of electricity. And unless we invest much more in the grids and, as I said, the control, digitalization of the control of the grid and the way to balance that, we are going to face these situations more often. The point is that quite often we hear politicians stating, yeah, we don't have funds to build so many renewable sources or whatever. Funds for building the actual production capacities are there. You have the private sector, which is more than willing to invest in that, but much more has to be invested in the grids.
Zvezdan, let me go back to you. As you know, everything started in Montenegro, so other countries were also worried what will happen later on, and if this happens again. So what are the authorities in Podgorica doing to prevent this occurring again during the summer?
As I said, we are closely monitoring the situation in order primarily to ensure the security of supply. It's our primary energy goal. It is up to energy entities and the regulatory bodies and up to the state to develop fully safety mechanism to the maximum possible extent, but also to make investment in infrastructure that should reduce these kind of risks to the minimal possible extent. As in economy, you have periods of booms and recessions. So in energy sector has also its patterns where blackouts, breakdowns and network losses are also part of its functioning. So it's up to the state and the stakeholders to develop mechanisms that should this kind of risk put to the minimum possible level. You cannot sometimes avoid them and predict them.
But Zvezdan, let me jump in here and ask you this. I mentioned briefly earlier that the countries have been connected because of the trade. So it has some advantages to have all these countries linked when it comes to power supplies. But is this example showing us that it also has its disadvantages?
Yes, of course, it has advantages and disadvantages. For the reason of stability and better management of the system, the countries of the regions are connected and they can trade. They can place surpluses or withdraw necessary amounts of the energy more quickly. But the downside is that any major failure is reflected in the surrounding system. So you cannot isolate the problem to one country or one area. As I want to point out that Montenegro and the countries of the region are striving to become the part of internal electricity market of European Union. And we are all taking all necessary steps to achieve that goal, from legislative alignment with the EU regulations to other steps which are necessary. And I hope that when becoming part of internal market of European Union, we'll be more able to manage this kind of risk. And this is also one of the conclusions from the energy community regarding the recent accident, that cooperation of the contracting parties will be a very good step forward for these kind of things. But also investment in infrastructure is a key to prevent these kind of situations.
Dennis, I want to bring in you here. Do you think it's been done enough by these four countries to prevent this to happen again? And how big of disadvantage is having the region connected when it comes to power supply?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think that having this market connected and having all these connectivities is a disadvantage. That's for me, that's not true. We can have only advantages with even building even more connections and connecting the countries and production capacities and sort of sharing the electricity. Because as I said, the future system will have renewables which are not constant, so you'll have to, let's say if there is sun in Albania, of course, and there is no sun in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are going to bring in electricity from Albania. And if there is wind in Bosnia, vice versa. So the fact is that the future energy system needs more connectivity and needs more cooperation of the countries. So that's where we can have a problem, where we have, for various reasons, lack of cooperation. Even though I know from on the technical level, the electroprivedas are working together and cooperating. But there should be much more investments in, as I said, I'm repeating myself, in connectivity and in digitalization of the control of the grid. On top of that, the future markets, I mean, unfortunately, we in Bosnia and Herzegovina still do not have the energy market established, but it will happen eventually, will actually allow the trade, because electricity is a commodity which does not sort of recognize the borders, and it is sold and bought through the grids. So the more grids we have, the more stable market we have, and at the end of the day, we have cheaper electricity for the consumers. And I think that's the biggest point we have to always keep in mind, is with a proper market and with proper connectivity, we are going to achieve lower prices of electricity, which will eventually, well, help the population living in this country. So unless we invest in the grids, we are going to have very high electricity prices, and I don't think that anyone wants that.
Certainly not. Zvezdan, Dennis, thank you both for being our guests on TRT World.